She didn't flinch when the lights came on. Loretta Beaumont-Osei had been driving for 46 years without so much as a parking ticket, and she pulled the silver Lexus to the curb the way she did everything, deliberately, calmly, with both hands visible on the wheel before the cruiser had even stopped rolling. The keychain on the ignition, a small brass oval engraved with the initials DSO, turned slowly in the draft from the open window. Loretta glanced at it once, then she watched the officer approach in her side mirror. Officer Cody Prewitt walked the way men walk when they've decided how a conversation ends before it begins. He told her the plates had come back flagged, possibly stolen vehicle, he said, not as information, but as an announcement. Loretta reached into the glove box without being asked and produced the registration and her insurance card, both in a clear plastic sleeve, both current, both bearing her full name. She set them on the window ledge and told him evenly that she was on her way to her son's promotion dinner and that she had owned this car since last April. Prewitt didn't look at the documents. He talked over her the way you talk over a television left on in another room, not listening, not processing, already moving to the next line. A sedan slowed as it passed, the driver rubbernecking at the lights. Prewitt turned toward it and said loud enough to carry, "Nothing to see here, just a situation with a stolen vehicle." The words landed on the sidewalk like something thrown. Loretta let a breath out through her nose. Then she said clearly and without heat, "Officer, this is my car. My name is on the title and on my license, both of which are in your hand." Prewitt looked at her then, really looked, the way someone looks when they've already decided what they're seeing. "Ma'am," he said, "anyone can say that." On the passenger seat face up sat her phone. The lock screen showed a photograph, a woman in a cream blazer and a tall man in a full dress uniform, both of them laughing in front of a building whose sign was just barely readable at the edge of the frame. Prewitt reached through the open window, picked up the phone without looking at the screen, and slid it into his breast pocket. "Evidence," he said. Loretta raised her wrists. Her pearl earrings caught the strobe. Her chin stayed up. Her eyes were dry. The cuffs clicked shut, and quietly, so quietly that Prewitt almost missed it, Loretta said, "My son will hear about this." Prewitt laughed. "Lady," he said, already turning away, "I don't care if the president hears about it." There are stories that look like one thing from the outside and are something else entirely from within. This is one of them. If you believe the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how long it takes, no matter who's laughing, then you already belong here. Subscribe and stay close, because what happens next is the kind of thing that reminds you why dignity is never actually the thing that gets taken away. He laughed, and the sound of it settled over Loretta Beaumont-Osei the way cold rain settles, without surprise, without permission. Here is what Cody Prewitt did not know, because he had not asked. For 34 years, Loretta had worked the Millhaven County Clerk's office. She had processed warrants, filed motions, certified records, and quietly corrected the paperwork of 3 generations of lawyers who couldn't be bothered to read their own filings. She had done it while raising 3 children. She had done it after her husband Marcus died of a heart attack at 51, leaving her with a mortgage, a minivan, and a grief she carried so neatly that her co-workers didn't know for 6 months. She retired at 66 with a commendation from the county judge and a room full of people who stood when she walked in. Last spring, for the first time in her life, she bought something purely for herself. Not practical, not on sale. The Lexus, silver, smooth, with heated seats, she had never once thought she deserved until the morning she decided she did. She paid for it with her retirement savings and drove it off the lot with the window down. Her name was on the title. Her name was on the insurance. Her name was, in fact, on quite a lot of things, including the frame certificate the county had mailed when her son became chief of police. 6 weeks ago, Darnell Beaumont-Osei had been sworn in as chief of the Millhaven Police Department, 18 years on the force, the youngest chief in the department's history. He had called her the night before the ceremony and said, "Mom, wear something nice," and she had laughed and told him she always did. The promotion dinner had been postponed twice, his schedule, always his schedule. Tonight was finally the night. On the back seat, visible through the window, sat a white gift bag. Inside it, a framed photograph. Loretta and Darnell on the steps of Millhaven PD headquarters on swearing-in day, her hand on his arm, his chief's insignia catching the light, both of them smiling the same smile. Prewitt had glanced at the bag through the glass and said, without lowering his voice, "Nice props, ma'am. People bring all kinds of things to seem legitimate." Loretta had said nothing. She had simply looked at him. Now Prewitt keyed his radio. His language was careful in the way that dishonest language always is, technically procedural, but shaped. Possible stolen vehicle, driver uncooperative, situation ongoing. He did not say she had handed him her documents without being asked. He did not say she had remained calm. He did not say she had recited her own address from memory before he finished his first sentence. What he said was designed to make whoever heard it picture something other than a 68-year-old grandmother in pearl earrings, sitting upright on a curb in a cream linen blazer. 3 blocks away, Deputy Miriam Taft heard the call come through. She had worked with Prewitt long enough to know the shape of his reports, the rhythm of them, the way certain words appeared when he wanted a situation to read a particular way. She sat with the radio a moment longer than necessary, her body cam light already blinking green. Then she pulled out of her position and drove toward the stop. Quietly, no siren, Taft parked behind Prewitt's unit and stepped out. She took in the scene the way a careful person takes in a scene, slowly. Completely. The documents on the passenger seat, the gift bag in the back, the woman on the curb whose wrists were cuffed and whose spine had not bent an inch. Prewitt turned and gave her a nod that said good, back up, the easy confidence of a man who assumed the room agreed with him. Deputy Taft looked at Loretta Beaumont-Osei, and instead of backing Prewitt up, she went very, very still. Prewitt read Taft's stillness as approval. That was his first mistake. Emboldened, he straightened his shoulders and announced loudly, for the bystanders, for the running cameras, for anyone within half a block, that Loretta Beaumont-Osei would be transported to the station for processing. The Lexus would be towed. Her phone, which he slid from her hand and dropped into his breast pocket, was now evidence. She did not beg. She did not argue. She sat on that curb the way a woman sits who has spent 34 years watching courtrooms sort truth from theater, patiently, and with absolute clarity about which one this was. Then she spoke. In a clear, unhurried voice, Loretta recited the car's full vehicle identification number. Every digit, every letter, no hesitation, no stumble, the way you recite something you memorized because it mattered to you, because you signed the papers yourself, because it was the first luxury you ever allowed yourself after a lifetime of going without. That number, she said, is on the title. In the glove box, in my name. Prewitt smiled the way men smile when they've already decided not to listen. Save the party tricks for the station, ma'am. Behind him, Deputy Miriam Taft had not moved from the edge of the scene. Her body cam light, a small, steady red dot, had been running since before she stepped out of her cruiser. She had said nothing because silence, in that moment, was the most useful thing she had to offer. She stepped toward Prewitt now, kept her voice low. "Cody," a pause, "you need to slow down." He turned, looked at her the way he looked at anything that inconvenienced him. "Stay in your lane, Taft." She nodded once, a single, quiet nod. Then she walked back to her cruiser, sat down, and made a phone call, not to dispatch. The tow truck operator hooked the Lexus. Prewitt straightened his badge. The bystanders kept filming. And Loretta Beaumont-Osei, sitting on that curb with her wrists bound and her chin level, said nothing more. She had already said everything that needed to be said. She had given them the number. She had spoken her son's name. Prewitt had laughed. "I don't care if the president hears about it," his own words, still warm in the air. A black command SUV with department insignia turns onto the street, and Prewitt, squinting at it, has no idea yet why his stomach should drop. The command SUV rolled to a stop 6 feet from Prewitt's cruiser, and the door swung open before the engine had finished settling. Chief Darnell Osei stepped onto the asphalt in full dress uniform, the same uniform Loretta had ironed a crease into 18 years ago when he made patrol officer, and the one she'd watched him button himself on swearing in day 6 weeks ago. He hadn't changed out of it. He'd been 3 blocks away, at a table with a reservation under his mother's name when Deputy Taft's call came through. He didn't look at Prewitt first. He walked straight to the curb, crouched down in front of Loretta, and said one word, "Mom." The bystanders went silent the way a room goes silent when something irreversible has just been said aloud. Someone stopped their phone mid-pan and didn't start it again for several seconds. Prewitt's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Darnell lifted Loretta's wrists, gently, the way a man checks something he is afraid to find damaged, and looked at the cuff marks. His jaw moved once, then he stood, turned, and faced Prewitt with the kind of stillness that doesn't need volume to fill a street. Prewitt's face had gone the color of old chalk. The smirk, the one that had been load-bearing for the last 40 minutes, was simply gone, like a word erased from a sentence that no longer made sense without it. Darnell extended his hand, palm up. "The phone, officer." Prewitt handed it over without a word. Darnell unlocked it, he knew the code, and the screen lit up. The wallpaper filled the display. Loretta and Darnell, standing in front of the Millhaven PD headquarters sign on swearing-in day, her cream blazer pressed, his insignia gleaming, both of them laughing at something just off camera. The phone had been in Prewitt's pocket for 37 minutes. He had never once looked at the screen. A woman in the crowd said something low to the person beside her. No one else made a sound. Darnell walked to the Lexus. He opened the rear door. The gift bag was right there, just as it had been when Prewitt called it props, and he reached in and lifted out the framed photograph. He carried it to the hood of the car and set it down, face up, without ceremony. Loretta on the left, Darnell on the right, Millhaven, PD headquarters behind them both. He left it there for everyone to see. Then he turned back to Prewitt, and his voice, when it came, was quieter than anything else on that street. "Explain the probable cause for this stop right here, right now." Prewitt looked at the photograph. He looked at the phone. He looked at the brass keychain in the ignition, DSO. 3 small letters he had dismissed without a thought, and something behind his eyes did the arithmetic it had refused to do for the past 40 minutes. There was no theater left, no procedure to hide behind, no radio call to reframe the story, no bystander slow enough to miss what was sitting on the hood of that car. The cameras were running. Taft's body cam had been running since the moment she arrived, and the chief of the Millhaven Police Department was standing on the asphalt in full-dress uniform, waiting, with the patience of a man who already knew every answer and simply needed Prewitt to say the words himself. Prewitt said nothing. Darnell reached up and removed his chief's cap. He held it out to Taft without looking away from Prewitt. Taft took it. Her face gave nothing away, but her hands were steady. "Badge and sidearm, Officer Prewitt," Darnell said, "right now, on this hood." Cody Prewitt's badge and sidearm hit the hood of the silver Lexus at 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. By Thursday morning, Internal Affairs had opened a formal review. That is how fast a body cam and a chief's signature can move when the footage is clean and the will is there. Deputy Taft's footage was everything she had promised herself it would be, time-stamped, unedited, 41 minutes and 12 seconds of audio and video that captured every word, every gesture, every moment, including the one where Prewitt, watching the bystanders record on their phones, said with a smirk that he didn't care if the president heard about it. He had said it as theater. It entered the record as evidence. The department's own plate query logs told the same story the Lexus had always been telling. The vehicle was never flagged, not as stolen, not as anything. The flag Prewitt had described to a passing motorist on a Tuesday evening existed nowhere in the system, because he had invented the premise of the stop from the first moment his lights came on behind her. Loretta testified on a Wednesday afternoon 3 weeks after the stop. She was not angry. She did not need to be. She had brought one document, the formal complaint, 5 pages, and printed at the top of page 1, the VIN number she had recited from the curb while sitting in handcuffs on the asphalt, the same number Prewitt had called a party trick. It was there because she had memorized it the afternoon she signed the title, because it was hers. Because she had earned it. She read the number aloud into the council chamber microphone slowly, without looking down. The room was very quiet. What Loretta's testimony cracked open was larger than one stop on one Tuesday evening. The Internal Affairs Review had surfaced something the investigation had not been looking for. 3 prior complaints, all involving black drivers, all closed without meaningful review by a supervisor who had since retired on a full pension. 3 people who had filed paperwork and heard nothing back. 3 files that had been allowed to go quiet. Loretta's case did not let them stay quiet. The former supervisor's pension was referred for review. Prewitt was terminated, not suspended, not reassigned. Terminated, and Millhaven PD announced a mandatory procedural overhaul co-designed not by administrators alone but by a community board. They asked Loretta to chair it. She said yes without hesitating. 3 weeks after the stop, 3 weeks after the curb, the cuffs, the tow truck that never came, the phone that was returned, the Beaumont-Osei family finally had the promotion dinner. Not at a restaurant, at the house on Clearwater Lane where Darnell had grown up, where Loretta had raised 3 children on a court clerk's salary and a refusal to be diminished. His badge sat on the table. The framed photograph, the one from the back seat of the Lexus, the one Darnell had lifted out and set on the hood without a word, stood against the centerpiece, and Loretta sat at the head of it, where she had always sat, because that was where she had always belonged. There is a version of this story where the ending is about Prewitt, about what he lost, what he deserved, what it felt like to watch it happen. That is not this story. This story ends on a clear night a few weeks later with Loretta driving the silver Lexus home alone. The city moving past the windows, the street lights catching her pearl earrings one after another like small punctuation marks in the dark. And she smiles. Not because she won, but because she never doubted she would. Some people carry their dignity like a weapon. Loretta carried hers like a fact. And facts, it turns out, have a way of outlasting everything that tries to bury them. If this story stayed with you, if you believe the record always speaks eventually, drop a comment below. Tell us what you think Loretta said when she first walked into that community board meeting. And if you've seen quiet dignity hold the line when everything else failed, this is the place for that story too. Subscribe because this channel tells the stories that don't always make the front page, but should.